war has been the world's most talked about failed international relations since 2022. However, since the war raged on nonstop, Ukraine's closest neighbors, Poland, supported them with over $1 billion in weapons, including ground artillery like howitzers, combat vehicles, drones, anti-aircraft launchers, ammunition, and tanks. Following Poland's initiative to back Ukraine, other North Atlantic Treaty Organization members decided to follow suit, especially the United States. Does Ukraine have just enough to win this war? How much advantage do these tanks give them? Join us as we unveil the most lethal tanks from other North Atlantic Treaty Organization nations in Ukraine. Dominance is a worldwide concept that is taken most seriously by some of the greatest countries in the world. Evidently, Russia, the United States, China, and the United Kingdom have been at the top of the pile almost forever. However, the tide soon shifted, and the United States appears to be a mile apart from everyone else, especially as it remains a powerhouse, towering over global economic and military sectors. As expected, the Kremlin has shown great resolve to be at the summit of world powers, where it once dominated as a part of the USSR Soviet Union. Hence, its deliberate decision to expand its lands and expel the control of the West by wresting control of parts of Ukraine. Being a sovereign state, Ukraine obviously tried to repel Russia's wishes and tried to team up with the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, an organization that protects the interests of its own by securing their freedom and sovereignty through political and military means. Russia took it as an affront and decided to take on Ukraine in a war at the dawn of February 24, 2022. Russia landed the first attack, drawing first blood with a barrage of airstrikes and ground artillery. The Kremlin had four too many demands. First, they wanted the West, Ukraine, and the European Union to recognize Crimea as Russian territory. Then they wanted guarantees that Ukraine would never join the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, while also demanding that Eastern Europe is completely free from the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and lastly sought the demilitarization and denazification of Ukraine. Ukraine deemed the demands as out of context and unnecessary, hence they have communicated their unwillingness to meet Vladimir Putin's demands. This show of force in the face of serious adversity and a military Goliath like Russia displayed the Ukrainian people and government's mettle, which finally earned them the support of nations around Europe and North America, some of whom are member nations of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. As expected, some nations were afraid to go up against Russia owing to its economic and military might. According to the Polish president Andrzej Duda, at the beginning of the war, when it was really very difficult to get help for Ukraine, everyone was afraid and reluctant. The Germans gave helmets, we gave tanks. Poland was the first nation to show their support to Ukraine, with confirmed reports showing that it sent artillery and tanks worth over $1.7 billion. Speaking of tanks, the only man who ever beat a tank was John Wayne, and he was in another tank. This quote was said decades ago, and it still holds true, owing to the importance of tanks as a war machine, capable of immense death and destruction. Poland's first significant amount of support was donated to the front lines of the Russo-Ukrainian War, where they supplied almost 350,000 tanks, a figure that exceeds the total amount transferred by other countries that supported them, like the United States, the United Kingdom, Germany, Sweden, Norway, and Spain. The Polish government provided Ukraine with 14 modern Leopard 204 tanks and 60 older models of PT-91 tanks, as well as 280 T-72M, T-72M1, and T-72M1R tanks. Although the Polish government also donated some serious aerial firepower by giving out helicopters, like the MiG-29s and Mi-24s, their most discussed weaponry to be dispatched to the front lines of the Russo-Ukrainian War are the tanks, especially the T-72 tanks. What makes them so special? The T-72s are a family of Soviet main battle tanks that entered the production stage in the early 1970s. As expected, no idea comes out of a vacuum, and such was the case for the T-72s, which were initiated from the T-64's design model. The T-72 started from a rivalry between design teams. It was the perfect weapon, born out of a conflict to be used in a conflict. But that is far from what makes it a dominant force in battle. The T-72 was created with a nuclear, biological, and chemical protection system, otherwise called an NBC. The inside of both the hull and turret is lined with a synthetic fabric made of boron compound, meant to reduce the penetrating radiation from neutron bomb explosions. Furthermore, in the heat of battle, with shells flying around and enough radiation poisoning from the fallout to kill a whole regiment, the crew is supplied with clean air via an air filter system. The tank is deliberately slightly overpressured in such a way that it prevents the entry of contaminated or radioactive air. Furthermore, for T-72s, the tanks are retrofitted with an autoloader that efficiently forces out the smoke compared to the manual pig loader version. But it even gets better in the interior. Like every Soviet family tank, the T-72s follow the same build patterns. The tanks are kept very low, compact, and protected, even though it obviously means there is little room for the crew. However, the trade-off offers more in protecting the air that gets to the tank and stronger armor, keeping the crew safe but slightly uncomfortable. However, what makes the tank really exceptional is its stealth ability. The tank is built to have a small silhouette, which is military talk for a small body frame, meaning that it could stay hidden beyond huge mountains, walls, hills, or even debris while firing mean rounds of ammunition towards the opposition, especially at long distances. Imagine the tactical advantage and flexibility of a tank at that height. In contrast to the bigger helicopters like the American M1 Abrams, where crew comfort and accessibility are prioritized, the Polish T-72 takes away that comfort for more tactical advantages. But just how small are these tanks? There were rumors about the T-72s being so small that the crew members who could fit couldn't be any taller than 5 feet 4 inches. However, that has been debunked, and the size was reportedly 5 feet 9 inches, the standard size for tanks at the time. Although the 5 foot 4 inch tails were untrue, one thing was certain. The T-72 tanks had extremely small periscope viewports, especially when the top hatch was closed, meaning that the driver could barely see outside the terrain they patrolled. However, it gets worse. The tanks do not use a steering wheel like a car or some special joystick like in the Israeli Carmel tanks, but instead use a pair of handles called tillers. The driver has a really hard job driving the tank because both hands are stationed on the tiller, moving back and forth to propel the tank, while they also propel the 7-speed gear stick simultaneously, making the tank a nightmare to drive. While tactical advantages could be important for winning a war, there are some incredible downsides. For some context, the bigger tanks, like the M1 Abrams, have 4 crew members, including a driver, the commander, the gunner, and the pig loader. However, the T-72s are a loader short owing to their small silhouette frame, and consequently, a lack of space to do whatever they wanted. But here is where the trade-off could pose a serious threat. However, apart from the small, combat-first-size drawbacks, the tank seems popular among old Soviet nations. Hence, it was duly appreciated by Ukraine, as it was seen leading the front lines at the Russo-Ukrainian War. Although the tanks are good for combat, just how bad can the drawbacks get? If an autoloader suddenly stops working in the heat of battle, it is super difficult to fix, and in some cases, nearly impossible. Although, as a failsafe, the tanks have a built-in manual override that can help facilitate manual loading, it is painfully slow and not designed to be used in the heat of battle, where a small delay in decision-making could be fatal. Also, the crew, even though they are just 3, are not completely safe from a possible explosion. Some versions of the autoloader in the T-72s often store their ammunition in the same space as the crew. Hence, should the tanks be hit in the wrong place, an explosion is bound to happen. While these drawbacks are obviously taken into consideration, the Polish government sees it as the exact type of motivation that the Ukrainian army needs. The tank was designed during the Cold War, meaning that they prioritized survivability over sustenance and functionality over comfort. It was a perfectly designed war machine, and the small silhouette frame already tells its story. Although the drawbacks are quite convincing, the T-72s are retrofitted with some of the greatest military guns to ever grace a battlefield. Equipped with the 125mm 2A46 series main gun, which is capable of firing anti-tank guided missiles and standard main gun ammunition, including high-explosive anti-tank and armor-piercing, fin-stabilized, discarding sabot rounds. The T-72 is rated as one of the best equipped tanks in the world. Early T-72s, like the T-72 Object 172M, used a 2-26 M2 model gun, which had been first mounted on the T-64. But why was it eventually changed in the later models to the 2A46 series main gun? The 2A26 M2 was a beast on the battlefield whenever it was fitted onto a tank. However, it had a shorter lifespan, mainly because its barrel wore out very quickly when firing high-powered shells. However, the 2A46 was just sheer monstrosity, as it displayed a serious capacity to fire high-powered ammunition, like the high-explosive anti-tank and the armor-piercing fin-stabilized, discarding sabot rounds for much longer periods before it needed a replacement. Furthermore, the accuracy and stability of the guns were night and day. The 2A26 M2s shook a lot when used to fire ammunition, especially when they were high-powered. However, the 2A46 has a much superior internal construction, meaning that it shook way less when being fired, regardless of the size and impact of the rounds stuffed in the gun. Although the older gun could fire all types of rounds, it soon lost its edge as military hardware continued to evolve. The evolution of ammunition into much deadlier, armor-piercing rounds made the gun nigh useless, as its barrels were too weak to fire them. However, the 2A46 was designed to be a monster, capable of firing not just armor-piercing rounds, but even high-explosive fragmentation projectiles, otherwise called the HEFS. The ammunition for the 2A46 gun is separated into two different pieces. First, the projectile is loaded, then followed by a separate propellant charge. Although the early versions of the 2A46 suffered from a relatively short barrel life, this was rectified on the 2A46 M1 version. Depending on the version, it offers 510.0 megapascal, which translates to 73,970 pounds per square inch, or from the 2A46M 1650.0 megapascal P-max chamber pressure. The rationale was simple. They wanted more boom behind the ammunition before it goes off. More pressure, more power. The poor chamber pressure was the exact reason that the 2A26M2 became outdated. While the T-72s stood at the forefront of the Russo-Ukrainian war, returning fire and fighting against Russia vehemently and dealing just enough damage, the best was yet to come. Poland had done their part first and continued to do so, spurring on others to show the same support. At the height of the Russo-Ukrainian War, Ukraine wanted more support, so the president offered the nation to join the North Atlantic Treaty Organization as a willing member of the organization. However, their offer was rejected. Although the reasons are muddled and lost in the political brouhaha, the most popularly published reason is due process, and Russia had warned against it. On the flip side, the Ukrainian government was pushing to join the treaty organization to have unbridled support from the other NATO nations, especially the United States. While the organization has no recognized army, member states can take collective military action in response to crises. For instance, the body supported the UN by intervening in the war in the former Yugoslavia between 1992 and 2004. While there is an alliance in 2008 that allows Ukraine the right to join the organization, the former chief of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, Jens Stoltenberg, said Ukraine could only join after the war ends. However, speaking at a defense summit in Brussels in February, U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said, "The U.S. does not believe that NATO membership for Ukraine is a realistic outcome of a negotiated settlement. This only means that in case of a scheduled talk for settlement between the two nations, it should be expected that Russia would not allow for Ukraine as a part of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization." However, with Ukraine's insistence on disagreeing with the Kremlin, spearheaded by President Vladimir Putin, who also isn't budging from his position, the war continues with escalation afoot. Since the continuity of the war has been decided, the United States responded with a show of support for Ukraine by stifling Russia with sanctions and then arming Ukraine with the most lethal tanks in the world. Of course, it isn't news that the United States has the greatest military might in the world, and this time, they decided to flex it. They had promised to send the 31 M1 Abrams armored tanks to Ukraine, a show of support in January 23, when the war was at its earliest. However, the first batch of the TANs did not come until September 8th and 10th in 2023. By October of the same year, all of the promised Abram ones had finally been delivered, and Ukraine was more confident than ever in standing a chance during ground duels with Russia's military. But what makes the T-72 so different from the M1 Abrams? While the T-72s were formed from the crucibles of the Cold War, with a strong desire for combat and a willingness for warriors to die for their beliefs, the M1 Abrams were formed from the lessons and cold sweat of the Vietnam War, where survivability was the greatest inspiration to help war engineers reimagine firepower and mobility, which prepared them for the 1980s, when the tanks were eventually brought to life. The M1 Abrams is largely regarded as the most lethal tank in the world, and for obvious reasons. It is more than just a tank. It seems more like a ground battleship owing to its sheer size. While tanks like the T-72s were created combat first with a small silhouette for stealth missions to basically hide and deal damage, the M1 Abrams were built to intimidate the opposition. The M1 Abrams is a behemoth on the battlefield, weighing almost 60 tons and roaring with a massive Honeywell AGT 1500 multi-fuel turbine engine, meaning that it could be fed all types of fluid, ranging from gasolines to diesels, petrol, and anything else. And it works just enough to keep that turbine engine going. The Abrams is a main battle tank designed by Chrysler Defense, now General Dynamics Land Systems, and it was named after General Creighton Abrams. The M1 Abrams are fitted with the standard Rheinmetall 120mm gun to hit long-range and short-range targets. While the guns could especially travel at a long range, the tank was designed to facilitate countermeasures for stealth optics, including camouflage. The earliest versions of the Abrams were painted with the Mobility Equipment Research and Design Command, MERDC, four-color paint scheme, which helped the Abrams blend into its position, almost like a chameleon, but a 60-plus ton chameleon. Although the color patterns stayed the same, it was repainted to match different environments. For some context, if the tank were to be operated in the snow, it would maintain a color pattern, but be repainted in a color that matches the environment to help it hide better. Unlike the T-72, which was easily hidden in open space because of its small silhouette and extremely combat-first designs, this 60-plus ton behemoth cannot simply hide because of its sheer size. Hence, a camouflage to aid hiding in plain sight remains their only option, and it is done to perfection. However, it isn't just the massive gun on the tank and its capability to camouflage and stealth despite its size that make it so special. It is an armored tank after all. Hence, what is its armor like? How protective is it of its crew? The armor of the Abrams was made out of Chobham composite plating, in addition to its rolled homogeneous armor, the famous RHA. Abrams uses a secret British-developed Chobham composite armor, which is referred to by the United States Army as special armor. This special armor features on the tank's turret across both the front and the sides. While the Abrams isn't the first tank to have ever used the armor, it is much thicker on the Abrams than on the older tank generations, owing to its sheer size. Chobham was optimized to withstand high-explosive anti-tank rounds and anti-tank guided missiles, which were at the time a relatively new concept on the battlefield. But Chobham is just that powerful. Although the United States and Chobham have been super secretive about the compositions that make Chobham what it is, speculations remain about it and why it is just that good. While the Abrams has served gallantly in the United States fleet, it was to be replaced in United States Army service by the XM-1202 Mounted Combat System. But following the project's cancellation, the Army opted to continue maintaining and operating the M1 series for the foreseeable future by upgrading optics, armor, and firepower. With the arrival of this behemoth at the warfront, only time will tell if its presence and capability are enough to tilt the war in Ukraine's favor. No criminal empire in recent history has loomed as large as the Sinaloa cartel, yet America's forces face it without hesitation. Guns flash behind shipping containers, speedboats slice through moonlit waters, and secret airstrips pulse with illicit activity, but the U.S. watches calculating every move. The cartel may control streets and skies, but its power meets a force far greater. How can an organization this massive be contained? And why, despite its size, does it fail to intimidate the world's most formidable military? Join us as we uncover why the U.S. is not afraid to go after the largest cartel in history. For nearly 2 decades, Mexico has waged a relentless and bloody struggle against the cartels, deploying police, federal agents, and military personnel to a war that remains far from won. Since 2006, when the Mexican government officially declared war on organized crime, more than 460,000 people have lost their lives, a staggering toll that underscores the scale and persistence of the violence. Billions of dollars in aid from the United States have supported Mexico's fight, yet the death toll continues to climb, a stark testament to the cartel's resilience and adaptability. Even amidst these challenges, Mexico has achieved moments of success. When President Felipe Calderón launched the military offensive, he mobilized tens of thousands of Mexico's 412,000 active-duty soldiers, often replacing or reinforcing local police. The crackdown yielded immediate results. 25 of the nation's 37 most notorious drug lords were captured, striking at the leadership of the major cartels. Yet this strategy revealed a critical flaw. Removing high-profile kingpins created power vacuums that fractured the underworld, splintering it into smaller, more violent factions. These emerging gangs were lean, unpredictable, and highly adaptable. Their decentralized operations and brutal tactics allowed them to operate under the radar and challenge state authority with increasing frequency. Compounding the problem, Calderón's successors shifted priorities, focusing on reducing homicide rates rather than aggressively pursuing the fragmented cartels, leaving these offshoots free to consolidate power. Today, the cartels are no longer merely criminal organizations. They have grown into paramilitary powers, capable of confronting the state on its own soil. Recognizing its limitations, Mexico has sought full U.S. involvement, and Washington has responded. The United States now brings its full technological and military might to the fight, deploying elite forces, advanced surveillance systems, and cutting-edge weaponry to a battle as complex as it is dangerous. The U.S. has urgent reasons to enter this fight. Between 90 and 94% of the heroin consumed in America originates in Mexico. At the same time, fentanyl, a far deadlier synthetic opioid, claims roughly 55,000 American lives each year. Cocaine adds yet another dimension, with thousands of tons crossing the southern border annually. For the United States, targeting the cartels is not just a matter of policy, it is a matter of survival. For Mexico, dismantling these criminal networks has been a decades-long struggle. Together, the alignment of these objectives creates a near-perfect partnership, where each country's interests reinforce the others, raising the stakes and amplifying the potential impact of success. On the surface, America holds an overwhelming advantage. The United States military, with its vast resources and global reach, enters a battlefield where sheer workforce seems to guarantee success. According to Global Firepower, the U.S. maintains roughly 1.3 million active-duty personnel, supplemented by nearly 800,000 reservists ready to respond if needed. Additionally, the country could rapidly expand its forces through its draft, with an average of 4.3 million eligible individuals annually. While such measures may never be necessary, the scale of America's military dwarfs any criminal organization. Yet the cartels are far from insignificant. Estimates suggest that Mexico's criminal networks employ around 175,000 individuals across dozens of gangs, effectively making them the country's 5th largest employer. The prison system also feeds their ranks, effectively making them 1.7 million people incarcerated across Latin America. The cartels can recruit opportunistically, steadily replenishing and expanding their workforce. While this process is gradual, it ensures resilience under sustained pressure. Despite the U.S. military's overwhelming size, victory cannot be taken for granted. Success requires careful strategy because the cartels wield advantages beyond workforce, chief among them, fear. Mexican public opinion highlights the challenge. In 2012, 80% of Mexicans expressed support for military action against the cartels, indicating a desire to see drug kingpins removed from power. Yet fear complicates the picture. By 2023, surveys conducted by the Border Report revealed that residents in cartel-dominated cities frequently felt unsafe in their own homes. In Juarez and Mexicali, Roughly 70% of adults reported living in fear. In Reynosa, the figure climbed to 83%. In Zacatecas, a city where corpses have been left hanging from bridges and stacked in vehicles, an alarming 92% of residents felt unsafe. This fear is precisely what the cartels exploit. It allows them to control communities without directly confronting the government. While some citizens may know where cartel members operate, few are willing to share intelligence, aware of the consequences. The threat of extreme violence, from abduction to execution, casts a shadow over any would-be informant, complicating operations far beyond what the workforce alone could resolve. The United States cannot simply surge into Mexican cities without caution. Cartel operatives blend seamlessly into urban environments, hiding among ordinary residents. Any aggressive assault risks massive civilian casualties, undermining the mission to weaken these criminal networks. Operations must therefore be precise, deliberate, and surgical, combining strategy with intelligence to navigate both the human and operational complexities of the battlefield. The weapons available to the cartels also pose a formidable challenge. Though Mexico allows citizens to own firearms, all legal sales occur through a single gun shop in Mexico City, controlled entirely by the Mexican military. This centralized system makes it virtually impossible for cartel members to acquire firearms legally, and the risks of attempting to circumvent the system are too significant. Arrests could compromise entire networks, so cartels overwhelmingly rely on smuggling weapons into the country. That smuggling has produced a heavily equipped criminal force whose arsenals are dominated by AR-15 and AK-47 style rifles, many traced to the United States and frequently modified to increase the rate of fire and lethality. In 2009 alone, authorities seized more than 4,400 modified rifles, many converted to select fire, while tens of thousands more remain in circulation. Even more alarming are the heavier systems that have surfaced. Insiders and seizures point to access to guided anti-armor weapons, with a Sinaloa operative known as El Flaco claiming javelin launchers and Mexican authorities having intercepted Stingers and AT-4 type launchers. Evidence that cartels possess stockpiles of battlefield-grade firepower. How every piece arrived remains unclear, though reported losses of military systems during past conflicts and persistent smuggling routes make diversion and illicit transfer plausible. And the presence of such weapons darkly raises the stakes of any conventional assault. The United States, however, fields overwhelming conventional strength. Thousands of tanks, hundreds of thousands of vehicles, hundreds of multiple launch rocket systems and artillery units, and widespread small arms and anti-armor inventories including javelins and standard M4 carbine issue, all backed by trained tactical units capable of large-scale operations. Still, raw firepower is only one part of the problem, because cartel strongholds are not isolated compounds but fortified positions embedded within towns and cities where civilians live and work, requiring restraint and surgical planning to avoid catastrophic collateral damage. A typical operation would therefore begin not with a frontal assault, but with containment. Forces would encircle the target, establish checkpoints on every access route, and issue public warnings through media and communications channels, instructing residents to shelter in place while schools and businesses close. Only after those measures and additional intelligence-driven preparations would armored convoys and infantry advance into the lockdown area, moving deliberately to isolate and dismantle the cartel presence while minimizing civilian harm. Intelligence is the backbone of these operations. Data gathered from surveillance and ground sources pinpoints the most critical cartel facilities, guiding American troops as they advance through urban streets. These movements resemble a heavily armed law enforcement sweep rather than a conventional military assault, emphasizing precision, minimizing civilian casualties, and targeting key cartel assets. When engaged, cartel members resist, transforming city streets into chaotic battlefields. AR-15 and AK-47s fire from rooftops, alleyways, and fortified positions, while U.S. forces respond with M4s and heavier weaponry. Ambushes may strike isolated vehicles, and javelin missiles could threaten tanks and armored units. Yet even under these conditions, confrontations overwhelmingly favor American forces. Superior workforce, advanced weapons, and coordinated tactics force cartel operatives to retreat whenever possible, prioritizing survival over futile resistance. One of the greatest challenges the U.S. faces is the cartel's escape infrastructure. Decades of conflict have honed their ability to vanish from sight. Underground tunnels, a hallmark of cartel strategy, allow operatives and leaders to evade even heavily armed adversaries. In 2022, authorities uncovered a 1,700-foot tunnel connecting Tijuana to a warehouse in San Diego. 61 feet underground and 4 feet in diameter, the passage featured a rudimentary railway system. Though primarily used for narcotics smuggling, tunnels like this double as emergency escape routes. Such tunnels are not unique. Multiple passages between Tijuana and San Diego have been discovered, and countless smaller hidden tunnels likely exist deeper in Mexico. The infamous prison escape of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, aided by a mile-long tunnel, illustrates the scale and sophistication of these networks. Cartel strongholds almost certainly feature similar systems that provide leaders with discrete avenues to flee during U.S. operations. Despite these challenges, American forces have developed strategies to counter them. Leveraging intelligence from Mexican authorities and cooperative civilians, the U.S. systematically implements blockades, targeted raids, and surgical strikes. Some missions capture high-value cartel members, while even partial successes scatter remaining personnel, forcing the abandonment of weapons caches and leaving territory temporarily undefended. These operations reveal a crucial insight: defeating the cartels does not require conventional warfare. By isolating members, cutting off resources, and restricting movement, American forces can cripple operational capacity. Disrupting the cartel's ability to function can be as effective as direct engagement, and this is where the U.S. Navy becomes a decisive factor. The Mexican cartels operate a makeshift navy, not one of battleships and fleets, but a network of vessels designed to move narcotics by sea. As Rear Admiral Christopher Tomey of the U.S. Coast Guard's Joint Insurgency Task Force South revealed in 2015, over 95% of drugs bound for the United States travel via water. Cartels utilize every type of vessel available, from massive container ships and non-commercial craft to sailboats, yachts, and humble fishing boats. Speedboats allow smugglers to outrun patrols, while improvised submersibles, constructed from fiberglass and marine-grade plywood, add a stealthy dimension. These crude submarines, powered by commercial engines and costing roughly $1 million each, slip beneath patrols undetected. Yet despite their ingenuity, the cartel fleet is strictly transactional, designed for concealment and transport, not combat. At sea, the United States enjoys overwhelming superiority. Its 440 naval assets collectively reach 4.5 million tons, a measure of size and endurance. Among them are 11 aircraft carriers and 9 helicopter carriers, unmatched platforms for projecting power. The cartels have no weapons capable of threatening these vessels, allowing the U.S. Navy to stage air and sea operations off Mexico with impunity. Complementing the carriers are 81 destroyers, long-range warships equipped with integrated anti-air, anti-submarine, and anti-surface systems, including long-range missiles. 26 corvettes provide agile surface support, while nearly 70 submarines offer decisive undersea capability, capable of neutralizing cartel submersibles or surface craft with a single torpedo. Identification remains the operational challenge. Civilian cargo ships or yachts cannot be targeted on suspicion alone. As a result, blockades and maritime interception become central strategies. The U.S. has concentrated its naval presence in choke points, including a cordon in the Gulf of Mexico, deployments in the Atlantic and Pacific, and a blockade near the Yucatan Channel positioned outside Cuban waters. On land, these efforts work in tandem with ground operations targeting cartel strongholds. In the air, the cartel's capabilities remain primarily logistical. Between 2006 and 2015, Mexican authorities seized nearly 600 planes and helicopters linked to the Sinaloa cartel, and thousands of clandestine airstrips reportedly facilitated their movement. Standard aircraft, Cessnas, Pipers, and Gulfstreams serve transport purposes but offer no offensive power. By contrast, the United States fields roughly 13,000 aircraft, including nearly 1,800 fighters, approximately 900 attack aircraft, 900 fixed-wing transports, a tanker fleet of 600, and thousands of helicopters. This overwhelming force dominates the skies, yet the U.S. has acted with restraint, avoiding direct strikes in populated areas. Instead, it turns off cartel mobility by targeting isolated airstrips and facilities, achieving strategic impact without widespread civilian risk. Recent surveillance operations have intensified efforts to locate hidden landing strips and trafficking routes. Once a strip is confirmed, it is rendered unusable, cutting off the air corridors the cartels rely on. Combined with tighter controls at civilian airports and inspections of private aircraft, this strategy effectively grounds much of the cartel fleet, leaving smugglers with only a handful of helicopters, few of which can match the scale or sophistication of U.S. aerial power. The conflict between the U.S. military and the Mexican cartels increasingly appears to favor American forces. Even while restraining full capabilities to protect civilians, the U.S. has struck cartel strongholds, imposed a naval blockade, and asserted near-total control of Mexican airspace. Yet the cartels remain far from powerless. Their greatest weapon is money. Estimates of their wealth vary widely. In 1929, Senator David Perdue described the cartel business as a multi-billion-dollar enterprise, potentially reaching $500 billion, larger than Walmart itself. Other analyses suggested annual revenues between $6 and $29 billion. Still, either way, the sums are staggering, providing ample resources to fund weapons, bribes, and logistics for a pseudo-military operation. Homeland Security Chairman Mark E. Green added perspective in 2023, noting that cartels earned an estimated $13 billion in 2021 alone from human trafficking and smuggling. While still far below the U.S.'s $850 billion defense budget in 2024, these funds allow cartels to purchase black market weapons, bribe local officials, and exploit weak links in law enforcement or the military, fortifying their operations in ways that pure firepower alone cannot counter. This financial leverage also reinforces the rationale for a U.S. naval blockade. With 95% of cartel drugs shipped by water, blocking ports denies their primary revenue stream. Remaining cash becomes finite, limiting the ability to replenish stockpiles or expand operations. Simultaneously, U.S. intelligence and ground forces target drug production facilities, using spy planes and guidance from Mexican authorities to dismantle the infrastructure that fuels the cartel economy. Outside supply chains are also under scrutiny. Roughly 90% of cocaine entering the U.S. originates in Colombia before passing through Mexican territory. Disrupting these routes, through naval coverage in the South Pacific or checkpoints along Central America's borders, further starves the cartels of revenue. The objective is clear: weaken the financial lifeline, create internal friction, and force cartel members to reveal key leaders. Yet even with these strategies, the cartels remain formidable because they operate in ways that differ from those of conventional armies. Violence within cartel networks is methodical and increasingly militarized. Robert J. Bunker, editor of Illicit Tactical Progress, Mexican Cartel Tactical Notes, 2013 to 2020, notes that cartels have incorporated military-grade weapons such as standoff munitions, rocket-propelled grenades, and rifle grenades. Foot soldiers wear body armor, carry assault rifles, and train in specialized camps designed to teach tactics and desensitize recruits to extreme violence. Improvised explosive devices and booby traps are common. This preparation primes cartels for guerrilla warfare. While the U.S. military may dismantle strongholds, destroy airstrips, and sever cash flows, much of the conflict takes the form of hit-and-run attacks, ambushes, and blending into local populations. Cartels exploit fear and chaos to control civilians, limit intelligence, and hinder American operations. Divide-and-conquer tactics allow small, dispersed U.S. units to be targeted, further complicating operational effectiveness. Corruption compounds the challenge. In December 2023, Mexican authorities arrested over 100 police officers across 2 states for misconduct and collusion. Cartels exploit this local corruption, using bribes to distort intelligence and protect networks. Combined with guerrilla tactics and vast financial resources, these defenses make the cartels resilient, adaptive, and challenging to dismantle entirely. America's strategy of cutting off the cartel's income strikes directly at the heart of their guerrilla tactics. Still, another critical factor could unravel the network entirely: the fragmented nature of the cartels themselves. There is no single, unified Mexican cartel. Instead, the country hosts multiple powerful gangs, the largest being the Sinaloa cartel and the Jalisco New Generation cartel. Other significant players include Losas, the Beltran organization, the Gulf cartel, and the Juarez cartel. These groups are constantly at war with one another, battling over territory and influence. This infighting becomes decisive in the later stages of the conflict. Guerrilla attacks from small cartel units may harass U.S. forces, but leadership is fractured. No single authority exists to coordinate resistance. Efforts to unify will likely produce chaos at the top. As the U.S. dismantles airstrips, destroys strongholds, and blocks financial lifelines, it can largely wait for the cartel's internal disorganization to work against them. Multiple warring factions attempting to cooperate often result in self-inflicted disruption that can be more damaging than American firepower. Even if the cartels manage some semblance of order, it will not suffice. The full force of the U.S. military would crush rank-and-file fighters, erase strongholds, and sever the flow of drugs and money. Guerrilla tactics would falter under overwhelming pressure, leaving cartel leaders exposed and hunted individually. In the end, the combination of internal disarray and relentless U.S. operations would bring the cartel's empire in Mexico to inevitable collapse. The Mexican cartels have built an army of their own, fitted with armored trucks, heavy machine guns, and even military-grade weapons, but still doesn't stand a chance against America's flying tank, the A-10 Warthog. This jet was born for battlefields where survival is nearly impossible, yet it always comes back. Could cartel firepower even scratch it, or would it be crushed in seconds? Join us as we find out what happens when Mexican cartels challenge the A-10 Warthog. The answer will leave you stunned. For years, Mexican cartels were treated as criminal gangs, but over time, their firepower has grown into something far larger. Today, many of these groups operate more like paramilitary forces. They rule large areas with convoys of trucks, powerful guns, and explosives, strong enough to compete with real armies. This did not happen overnight. It took many years, built on smuggling, outside connections, and easy access to black markets full of leftover military weapons. Ordinary pickup trucks have been turned into battlefield machines. Soldiers often call them technicals. Cartels reinforce these vehicles with steel plates and bullet-resistant glass, then mount them with powerful belt-fed weapons. Some carry .50 caliber machine guns, strong enough to rip through light armor or even damage helicopters flying close to the ground. Others carry grenade launchers or improvised rocket systems strapped onto the flatbed. When several of these vehicles move together in a convoy, they can overwhelm local police forces and even hold their ground against Mexico's army in open combat. Their weapon supplies go beyond small arms. Smuggling routes provide access to rifles and explosives built for war zones. Cartels have been seen using M60 machine guns, Barrett .50 caliber sniper rifles, and RPG-7 rocket launchers. These are not weapons meant for back alley shootouts. They are designed for the battlefield. They can pierce armored vehicles, bring down aircraft, or stop advancing troops. In terms of raw firepower, a well-armed cartel group can reach the level of a military infantry squad, at least on paper. The way they organize themselves makes them even more dangerous. In big battles, cartels send out long lines of vehicles moving together in an organized way. They use radios to plan attacks, fly drones to watch from above, and block roads the same way soldiers do. Some groups even mount anti-aircraft guns on trucks, firing thousands of bullets in a minute. With tactics like these, it's hard to tell the difference between a cartel and a real army. For cartel leaders, these weapons are not just for protection. It is about control. Heavy weapons keep smuggling routes open, protect shipments, and strike fear into rivals. These convoys act like moving fortresses, showing force and reminding local police they stand no chance. In places where the government is weak, this kind of military power makes cartels seem impossible to defeat. But even with all this, their power is not without limits. While their weapons are deadly against police or lightly equipped soldiers, they are not built to withstand modern air power. Most of their firepower is effective only at close to medium range. None of it can stop an aircraft designed to fly low, absorb heavy fire, and strike with precision from the sky. This is why many argue that, despite their growing strength, cartels cannot truly match a professional military. Their armored convoys, machine guns, and rocket systems give them the appearance of an army and the confidence to fight like one. But when placed against platforms such as the A-10 Warthog, their weapons become little more than easy targets waiting to be destroyed. Cartels may look powerful on the ground, but their strength fades when compared to an aircraft built to take hits and keep fighting. The real question is, how can convoys and trucks stand a chance against a machine like that? The A-10 Thunderbolt II, better known by its nickname Warthog, was built with a single goal: to protect troops on the battlefield. Unlike sleek fighter jets that rely on speed, the A-10 was made for endurance, precision, and resilience. It flies low, stays near the battle, and delivers massive firepower right where it's needed. One of its key features is the titanium cockpit, known as the bathtub. This thick armor protects the pilot from machine guns and even direct strikes from anti-aircraft weapons. The armor is so effective that planes have returned to base with engines damaged, wings torn, or fuselage riddled with holes, yet remain flyable. Few aircraft in history have shown that kind of toughness. Its most famous weapon is the GAU-8 Avenger, a massive rotary cannon that dominates the front of the aircraft. With 7 barrels, it fires 30mm depleted uranium shells at nearly 4,000 rounds per minute. Each shell can punch through tanks, fortified bunkers, or armored vehicles. The gun is so large that the rest of the plane was designed around it. When the cannon fires, the recoil is powerful enough to slow the jet mid-flight. But the Warthog is not limited to its gun. It can carry a wide range of weapons on its wings, including guided bombs, Maverick missiles, and rocket pods. This mix gives it the ability to take out tanks, artillery, supply depots, and convoys with pinpoint accuracy. More importantly, the A-10 can circle over battlefields for hours, ready to respond the moment ground forces need support. Fast jets pass overhead in seconds. The Warthog stays until the mission is finished. Against cartel firepower, machine guns, RPGs, or improvised technicals, the A-10's design is on another level. In Iraq and Afghanistan, it faced Soviet-built tanks, fortified compounds, and insurgent groups armed with heavy weapons. Even convoys with anti-aircraft guns could not stop it. The Warthog was created during the Cold War to destroy massed waves of Soviet tanks in Europe, so cartel arsenals seem small by comparison. Its survival features also set it apart. The twin engines sit high above the fuselage, keeping them away from ground fire and debris. They are built to keep running even when damaged, and at low power, they are quiet enough to make tracking difficult. Its wide wings give it strong lift, allowing it to fly low and slow while staying steady enough to hit targets accurately. The A-10 is also known for reliability. It has backup controls so pilots can keep flying even if hydraulics fail. Its fuel tanks conceal when hit, lowering the risk of fire or explosion. Tough landing gear lets it take off and land on rough airstrips near combat zones. The Warthog is respected for what it can do, not how it looks. Since its first flight in the 1970s, it has proven itself in every major conflict. Decades later, it remains unmatched in the role it was created for. Against ground units without advanced air defenses, the A-10 is devastating. Its mix of armor, endurance, and firepower explains why soldiers trust it and why enemies on the ground dread the sound of it overhead. The A-10 was built to survive the toughest battlefields, but toughness alone is not what makes it feared. Its true reputation comes from the moment it fires its main weapon. So what makes this gun so legendary? At the heart of the Warthog's strength is the GAU-8 Avenger cannon. This huge gun is what makes the plane so deadly. Unlike the smaller weapons carried by most jets, the Avenger was built for one job: smashing tanks, breaking bunkers, and wiping out convoys in seconds. With 7 spinning barrels, it fires 30mm rounds that strike with massive force. Each shell weighs nearly a pound and is designed to pierce through heavy armor. Fired in sustained bursts, the cannon spits out close to 4,000 rounds in a minute. The result is devastating. Steel, concrete, and reinforced vehicles crumble on impact. This is not a weapon meant to pin enemies down. It is meant to erase them. The gun sits directly under the plane's nose, lined up with the fuselage for accuracy. This placement makes the A-10 stable while firing. The recoil is so intense that it slows the aircraft slightly every time the trigger is pulled. Yet the Warthog was built to handle this kickback. The gun and plane are not separate tools. They function together as a single system. In combat, the Avenger has shown its effectiveness across different terrains. In deserts, it rips apart convoys moving supplies. In the mountains, the Warthog can hit hidden enemy positions with accuracy that normal artillery cannot. Its shells move so fast that they reach the target almost at once. Against tanks and armored vehicles, the heavy rounds break through defenses that smaller weapons cannot touch. The sound of the cannon has also become part of its legend. Soldiers often describe the deep roar as frightening for the enemy, but comforting for those it protects. That noise comes from the sheer number of shells being fired, each strong enough to damage or destroy a vehicle. Behind the gun is a giant drum stored inside the plane's body. It holds over 1,000 shells, allowing the Warthog to make several attack runs before needing to reload. A simple system feeds the shells into the gun and returns the empty cases back into the drum, keeping the plane balanced and steady even during heavy combat. Cartel convoys or fortified hideouts would stand little chance against such firepower. Makeshift armor bolted onto trucks cannot withstand the impact of a 30mm depleted uranium round. Where rifles or rocket-propelled grenades might damage a vehicle, the Avenger leaves it in ruins. For this reason, militaries trust the A-10 to tackle threats that ground troops cannot handle safely. During campaigns in Iraq and Afghanistan, the cannon proved its worth time and again. It was used against insurgents hiding in cities and villages, where precision mattered. The A-10 does not need to drop bombs that destroy everything around. It can go after enemy fighters directly, hitting hard without causing massive damage to the area. That mix of accuracy and devastation is what makes the Avenger stand apart from any other aircraft cannon in service. While the A-10 can carry guided bombs and missiles, it often does not need them. The cannon is strong enough to control the fight on its own. Entire armored columns, once thought to be the backbone of ground warfare, became vulnerable when faced with the Warthog. For any enemy relying on vehicles or fortified positions, the Avenger turns the battlefield into a death trap. Every design decision on the A-10 traces back to this gun. The armor, the engines, even the shape of the wings were all engineered to support the cannon. The Avenger is not just a weapon added to the jet, it is the reason the plane was built. This mix of gun and aircraft makes the Warthog one of the most feared planes in the world, able to wipe out ground targets in seconds. The A-10's cannon was built to tear through anything on the ground, but its real test came in wars where threats often hid in plain sight. How would the Warthog prove itself when the danger was not always visible? In Iraq and Afghanistan, battles were not fought in wide-open fields. They happened in busy cities, steep mountains, and huge deserts where enemies hid and attacked by surprise. These tough conditions tested the Warthog in ways training never could. What set the plane apart was its skill to fly low and keep fighting. Sleek fighter jets had speed, but that speed often worked against them when targets were small, hidden, or moving in tight spaces. In contrast, the A-10's wide wings let it fly slowly without stalling, giving pilots time to circle, watch, and wait. Soldiers on the ground valued this loiter time because it meant they had cover overhead even during sudden ambushes in difficult terrain. The threats were constant. Insurgents relied on roadside bombs, rocket-propelled grenades, and heavy machine guns. Some even had access to old Soviet-made anti-aircraft weapons. While these could be deadly to helicopters or light planes, the Warthog was built for punishment. Its titanium armor, backup systems, and rugged design allowed it to keep flying after taking hits that would bring down most aircraft. Many A-10s came back to base full of holes, yet still able to fight another day. In Iraq, one big lesson stood out. Accuracy was more important than sheer power. Enemies often hid in plain sight, driving in regular cars and trucks mixed with civilians. Dropping bombs or firing missiles could harm innocent people. But the GAU-8 cannon provided pilots a way to hit their target with much more control. This made the A-10 especially useful in modern wars, where protecting civilians was just as important as defeating the enemy. Afghanistan brought a different test. Its high mountains, deep valleys, and far-off villages gave fighters plenty of places to hide and made moving supplies difficult. The Warthog adjusted to this challenge. It could take off and land on rough airstrips close to the action, instead of relying only on big bases far away. This meant it could refuel, rearm, and get back into the fight quickly, staying close to the ground troops who needed help. The sound of the Warthog was also a weapon on its own. Soldiers often said hearing it circle above gave them courage, knowing backup was near. For the enemy, that same sound was a warning. If they moved or showed themselves, they could be struck within seconds. This fear kept many fighters hidden or forced them to pull back. The A-10 also proved itself as more than a tank killer. In both wars, it destroyed mortar crews, artillery sites, hidden bunkers, and supply depots. It protected convoys, covered medical evacuations, and provided a shield for soldiers caught under fire. Its mix of endurance and heavy firepower made it more than an attack plane. It became a guardian for the troops it supported. Together, Iraq and Afghanistan solidified the Warthog's reputation as the specialist for close air support. Other jets may dominate dogfights or deliver high-speed bombing runs, but few can match the A-10's ability to fly low, absorb hits, strike precisely, and stay on station for hours. These qualities made it one of the most dependable aircraft in modern warfare. The lessons were clear. Survival, accuracy, and persistence matter more than sheer speed or the newest technology when enemies hide among civilians or rugged terrain. The experience from these two wars showed why the A-10, despite its age, remains one of the most effective tools against heavily armed forces on the ground, no matter where the fight takes place. In Iraq and Afghanistan, the A-10 proved itself against trained fighters. That raises the question, what chance would a cartel convoy have? The Warthog was originally designed to wipe out Soviet tank columns during the Cold War. A cartel force, even one with improvised armor, would not last long under that kind of firepower. The GAU-8 Avenger cannon fires close to 4,000 rounds a minute, and each one can punch through thick steel. A line of trucks, pickups, or reinforced SUVs would be reduced to burning wreckage in seconds. Cartels often imitate military tactics. They weld steel plates onto vehicles, mount heavy weapons in truck beds, and travel in convoys meant to intimidate rivals. These tactics can overwhelm police units or even Mexican army patrols, but against the A-10, they would mean nothing. Vehicles that look threatening on the ground are easy targets from above. The Warthog can spot them, engage them, and destroy dozens in a single pass. Unlike fast jets, the A-10 is built to fly low, linger over the battlefield, and keep attacking until the job is done. That persistence was what made it so effective in Iraq and Afghanistan. Cartel groups, no matter how heavily armed, cannot counter that kind of pressure. Rockets, mortars, or rifles are no match for titanium armor and backup systems designed to survive direct hits from enemy tanks. This leads to a sensitive political issue. In recent years, Washington has debated whether the U.S. military should take direct action against cartels. Reports have shown that former President Donald Trump even signed a secret order telling the Pentagon to prepare for possible operations. Around the same time, cartels were officially labeled as foreign terrorist organizations, raising the possibility of military strikes at sea or on land. Mexico's government pushed back quickly. Officials stated that no American troops or aircraft would ever cross into Mexican territory. President Claudia Sheinbaum made it clear that cooperation would continue, but invasion was not on the table. Mexico stressed its sovereignty and flatly refused to allow foreign forces to operate on its soil. That meant that while intelligence sharing and border operations would move forward, the A-10 would never be used in official missions inside Mexico. This response highlights more than politics. It shows just how destructive the A-10 would be if it were unleashed on cartels. Police raids and small unit military actions are targeted and limited. The Warthog, on the other hand, delivers overwhelming force. A short mission could wipe out convoys, safe houses, or supply lines in minutes. The damage would be immense, and it would spill over far beyond one border. For that reason, cooperation has focused on other methods: intelligence, surveillance, and border security. Joint efforts track the flow of fentanyl, weapons, and migrants. Cartel finances are hit through sanctions, seizures, and tariffs. At the border, drug seizures, especially of fentanyl, have been cut nearly in half, and illegal crossings have dropped as enforcement tightened. These measures show the clear line between law enforcement and full-scale military power. Even so, the fact remains, if any cartel ever faced the A-10 directly, the fight would be over before it began. Convoys would be shredded, hidden compounds uncovered, and supply routes broken within hours. The Warthog was built for battlefields where tanks and anti-aircraft weapons filled the horizon. Against convoys of trucks and light arms, the result would be pure destruction. That is why planners may examine the idea but stop short of using it. The firepower is not just overwhelming, it is absolute. Facing the A-10 is not a battle, it is suicide. The F-35 might just be getting the biggest upgrade in modern fighter jet history. While most people think the future of air combat means building brand new sixth-generation fighters from scratch, Lockheed Martin is taking a completely different approach. Instead of starting over, they are pushing the F-35 to its absolute limits, adding cutting-edge technology that could rival jets that haven't even been built yet. What kind of firepower would the upgraded F-35 carry, and how do they give the United States an edge over other countries in battle? Join us as we dive into Lockheed Martin's plan and whether their evolution over revolution approach can actually work. In military aviation, there is always a debate: push for brand new tech or keep improving what already works. Lockheed Martin isn't sitting around talking about it. They are upgrading the F-35 to pack in features that edge it closer to sixth-generation fighter capabilities. It's a bold move that leans into evolution over reinvention. Interestingly, the company compares the F-35 to a NASCAR race car, not because it's flashy, but because it is being fine-tuned for peak performance. Instead of building something entirely new, they are squeezing every bit of potential out of a proven platform. The big question now is whether this strategy can hold up against next-gen competition, like Boeing's upcoming F-47. Boeing's F-47 is shaping up to be the Air Force's next big step in fighter jet development. It's part of the Next Generation Air Dominance program, which has been focused on finding a replacement for the F-22 Raptor. This new aircraft is being built with air superiority in mind and could end up being the first sixth-generation fighter in the United States military. The Air Force is planning to acquire at least 185 units of the aircraft, with the final count subject to adjustments depending on funding and operational needs. Design targets include a combat radius of over 1,000 nautical miles, allowing for long-range strike missions and sustained patrol coverage. Projected top speed is set to exceed Mach 2, continuing the tradition of high-velocity performance seen in previous United States air superiority platforms. Despite this plan, the F-35's development kicked off in the mid-1990s under the Joint Strike Fighter program, which set out to build one aircraft that could handle missions across different branches of the military. The first prototype, called the X-35, flew for the first time in October 2000, showing that the concept had real potential. After that, it took another 5 years of engineering and testing before the first full production model, the F-35A, was ready to fly. That flight marked a major step forward, proving the program's goals could be met with a fully functional aircraft. From the start, the team behind the F-35 set out to build a flexible fighter jet that could take over for most of the United States military's existing aircraft, with different versions designed for each branch. Unlike the F-22 Raptor, which was built for a more specific role, the F-35 Lightning II got its name as a nod to the Lockheed P-38 Lightning from World War II, a way to link today's technology with a legacy of past innovation. The project also brought in a wide range of international partners, aiming to make the jet the most widely used fighter across global military forces. Lockheed Martin's plans for the F-35 have delivered strong results, with key milestones showing how widely the aircraft has been adopted. In early 2024, the company marked a major moment by finishing the 10,000th F-35 airframe. That figure highlights how much demand the jet has generated across military forces around the world. Fifth-generation fighters stand apart from earlier models not just because of their stealth-focused design, but because of the advanced computer systems running inside. The F-35 in particular is often described by engineers as a flying computer, thanks to the level of onboard processing power that drives its performance. If anyone asks around at Lockheed Martin about the toughest part of building the F-35, mission systems tend to come up first. That makes sense. considering the Block 3F software needed over 8 million lines of code just to run. The scale of that complexity becomes even clearer when looking at the upcoming Block 4 update, which pushes things even further in terms of computing power and system capability. The Block 4 upgrade is being rolled out in stages from the late 20s through the mid-30s to keep systems running smoothly and maintain full operational performance. The update adds a range of improvements to the F-35, including new weapons built for the platform, specialized armaments for international users, upgraded sensors for improved situational awareness, and the AN/APG-85 radar system with better detection and tracking capabilities. The upgrade also adds stronger electronic support systems to help the aircraft spot and respond to threats more effectively. Video data sharing has been improved to support better coordination with other units. One of the biggest changes is the shift to agile software development, which speeds up how updates and improvements are delivered compared to older methods. A major part of the Block 4 upgrade is Technology Refresh 3, or TR3. It brings faster processors and more memory to the F-35, making it better equipped to handle complex missions and advanced computing tasks. This update keeps the aircraft responsive and reliable under demanding conditions and sets the stage for future upgrades as mission needs and threats continue to evolve. Lockheed Martin is working on upgrades to the existing Pratt & Whitney F135 engines used in the F-35 fleet, while also looking into adaptive engine technologies. These new systems are designed to change performance settings on the fly, depending on mission needs and operating conditions. The Adaptive Engine Transition Program, or AETP, was launched in 2016 to push development of next-generation propulsion systems. In 2018, Pratt & Whitney received contracts to build two experimental engines, the XA101 and XA100, each rated at 45,000 pounds of thrust. By 2021, the program had made solid progress toward changing how fighter aircraft engines are built and perform. The Adaptive Engine Initiative was restructured and rebranded as the Adaptive Engine Development Program, expanding its scope to cover a wider array of military aircraft instead of concentrating on just one. In 2022, the Air Force launched the F-35 Adaptive Engine Replacement Program to begin readying both the aircraft and its infrastructure for future integration of these advanced propulsion systems once they reach operational maturity. In 2023, military leadership chose to focus on upgrading the current F-135 engine through a program called the Engine Core Upgrade, or ECU, instead of moving forward with brand new engine designs right away. The Engine Core Upgrade brings notable gains in key performance areas, boosting thrust and fuel efficiency by 5% and improving cooling capacity by 50%. These changes are essential for meeting the demands of the Block 4 feature set. The upgraded cooling system is critical due to the increased heat produced by the advanced systems in Block 4. Without proper thermal management, extended missions could see reduced performance and reliability. The ECU method delivers immediate improvements while keeping the existing engine platform intact, sidestepping the risks tied to adopting entirely new propulsion technology. The Air Force has held off on swapping out the F-35's engines for the experimental XA100 models from the adaptive engine programs. That doesn't rule out the possibility of upgrades later on, possibly in the 30s or 40s, once the technology is fully developed. For now, these adaptive engines are expected to first appear in the Next Generation Air Dominance Fighters, or NGAD. Designing those aircraft around the engines from the start makes it easier to fully integrate the new propulsion systems, rather than trying to retrofit them into platforms built for older technology. Before any new engines show up, the F-35 is expected to start working alongside a range of unmanned aerial vehicles that expand its role across different mission types. Lockheed Martin's Skunk Works is behind Project Carrera, which includes the Speed Racer drone. Each unit runs about $1 million and is built for advanced electronic warfare and reconnaissance. These drones are meant to operate in sync with manned fighters like the F-35, allowing one pilot to manage several platforms at once while still relying on human decision-making in high-stakes combat scenarios. Aerial combat is shifting toward integrated teams where F-35 jets operate with advanced unmanned systems to boost overall mission effectiveness. A key part of this setup is the Common Multi-Mission Truck, or CMMT. It's a low-cost cruise missile option priced around $150,000 per unit, with a range of more than 500 miles. This opens up new tactical options for mission planning and execution. Unmanned systems are changing the way aerial missions are carried out. A single F-35 will be able to control and coordinate up to 8 drones at once through AI-driven systems that handle real-time calculations and decisions. This marks a shift in strategy from solo aircraft missions to networked operations that combine human input with automated precision. The Kratos XQ-58 Valkyrie is one of the more advanced drones being developed to operate alongside modern fighter jets. With a unit cost of about $4 million, it is built to support F-22 and F-35 aircraft during complex missions that involve coordination between manned and unmanned systems. Its design includes stealth-focused features like a sharp-edged frame, a V-shaped tail, and hidden air intakes that help lower its radar visibility and improve performance in hostile environments. The aircraft is capable of flying solo or as part of a coordinated drone group. Its deployment options are adaptable, with the ability to launch from trucks, containers, or naval ships based on mission needs. At the same time, upgrades are being developed for F-35 jets to improve electronic warfare systems aimed at strengthening coordination with unmanned platforms during advanced operations. These advancements are part of the Pentagon's broader plan under the Penetrating Affordable Autonomous Collaborative Killer Program, or PAK. The goal is to develop cost-effective systems that deliver strong performance in combat scenarios. Although the Valkyrie measures only about 30 feet in length, it can carry up to 1,200 pounds of weapons, making it a valuable asset in combined operations involving both crewed and uncrewed aircraft. The payload capacity of the aircraft supports a range of munitions based on mission needs, including precision-guided missiles for targeted strikes and area effect weapons for broader tactical use. This adaptability allows commanders to adjust drone configurations as battlefield conditions change without needing separate aircraft types for each scenario. A major step forward in drone integration with F-35 jets and future next-generation air dominance fighters is the development of collaborative combat aircraft, or CCA. These unmanned systems are being built to operate alongside crewed platforms like the F-22 and F-35, handling a range of missions such as air-to-air engagements, electronic jamming, intelligence collection, and precision strikes on ground and naval targets with high levels of coordination. Collaborative combat aircraft are a leap beyond earlier loyal wingman drone designs, which relied heavily on human control. These new systems are equipped with advanced AI, allowing for full autonomy, quick adaptation to mission changes, and lower costs compared to conventional military jets. The United States Air Force is aiming to field around 1,000 of these drones, 600 paired with 300 F-35s and 400 supporting 200 NGAD fighters. That number could grow to more than 2,000, depending on how many drones each aircraft can handle during missions. Lockheed Martin is changing the trajectory of the F-35 Lightning with plans to bring in 6th-generation technology from the Next Generation Air Dominance program. CEO Jim Taiclet confirmed that the upgrades will push the jet's capabilities beyond its current level, aiming for what he calls 5th Generation Plus. The overhaul includes integrating cybernetics across the aircraft's systems and looking into a fully unmanned version that could fly without a pilot on board. One of the most talked about moments from the CEO's announcement was a challenge issued to Lockheed Martin's engineering teams. The target: deliver 80% of 6th-generation capability at half the cost. That statement has stirred debate across the defense sector and among aviation analysts, signaling a major change in how future combat aircraft might be developed and funded. The idea centers on turning the F-35 into what some in the industry are referring to as an NGAD Light, a version that offers many of the advanced features expected from 6th-generation fighters, but at a lower cost. That approach could make it viable for more military buyers. Lockheed Martin has emphasized that it isn't trying to go head-to-head with Boeing for the official NGAD contract. Instead, the focus remains on upgrading the F-35, which continues to be a key part of the company's defense lineup and a major source of revenue. Lockheed Martin's strategy makes use of its current experience and manufacturing setup, sidestepping the expense and uncertainty tied to building a brand new aircraft. This method of upgrading the jet has led to comparisons within defense circles to high-performance cars, with some referring to it as the NASCAR or Ferrari version. The label highlights how the existing airframe is being enhanced with advanced tech drawn from both the F-35 and NGAD programs. The upgraded jet is expected to benefit from the same advanced systems being built for sixth-generation fighters. That includes hypersonic weapons capable of striking at extremely high speeds, laser-based defenses designed to counter incoming threats, and sensor suites that offer a high level of situational awareness during operations. The new technology being added to the jet brings up a key question. If it can match the capabilities of sixth-generation jets like the NGAD, is there still a need to build those next-gen platforms from scratch? This could change military planning, not just in the United States, but also among allied countries already flying the F-35. Upgrading current fleets might be a more practical option than investing in entirely new aircraft, especially when cost and export limitations are factored in. The F-35 packs some seriously advanced mission systems that make this fighter jet stand out from everything else in the sky. The whole setup revolves around getting all the different sensors and avionics to work together, creating what's basically a super enhanced view of everything happening around the aircraft. At the heart of it all sits the Northrop Grumman AN/APG-81 radar, an active electronically scanned array system that does way more than just detect targets. This actually doubles as part of the electronic warfare suite, which is pretty clever engineering when thinking about it. The electronic warfare game gets handled by the BAE Systems AN/ASQ-239 Barracuda system, designed to mess with enemy radar and communications. Then there's the really cool Northrop Grumman/Raytheon AN/AQ-37 system. They call it the Distributed Aperture System, or DAS. This creates a 360-degree view around the aircraft using multiple sensors. For targeting, Lockheed Martin built the AN/AAQ-40 Electro-Optical Targeting System, or EOTS for short. Communication and navigation get covered by the Northrop Grumman AN/ASQ-242 CNI suite. That's communications, navigation, and identification all rolled into one package. What makes all this technology really special isn't just the individual pieces, but how everything connects together. Instead of having separate systems doing their own thing, the F-35 fuses all this sensor data into one complete picture of what's happening in the local area. The pilot gets this enhanced situational awareness that previous generation fighters just can't match, and the whole aircraft becomes part of a larger networked combat system. Most of the F-35's software got built using C and C++ programming languages, though the developers also grabbed some ATA-83 code from the F-22 program. The Block 3F software package ended up with 8.6 million lines of code, which gives a sense of just how massive this system really is. The whole jet runs on Green Hills software, Integrity DO-178B. That's a real-time operating system designed specifically for critical applications. This RTOS handles the integrated core processors, while data gets moved around using IEEE 1394B and fiber channel connections. The avionics design took a smart approach by using commercial off-the-shelf components wherever possible. This COTS strategy makes upgrades way cheaper and gives more flexibility down the road. The software-defined radio systems are a perfect example. Fleet-wide software updates become much easier to roll out when the hardware foundation uses standard components. But here's the thing that really caused headaches during development: the mission system software, especially the sensor fusion parts. Getting all those different sensors to talk to each other and create one unified picture turned out to be incredibly complex. This software challenge became one of the biggest technical hurdles in the entire program and ended up causing major delays that pushed back delivery schedules for years. If Lockheed Martin released a significantly upgraded F-35 to the market, it's expected that many countries would move quickly to secure orders. The cost-to-capability ratio would make it a strong alternative to developing homegrown platforms or waiting for export versions of sixth-generation fighters. Even if Boeing and its collaborators roll out an exportable NGAD, questions remain about whether the pricing would allow for widespread adoption among Allied air forces. Lockheed Martin's plan hinges on whether its engineers can turn the CEO's claim of building a sixth-generation F-35 at half the usual cost into a working product. There's still debate over whether that goal is realistic or just corporate optimism that doesn't match the challenges of developing high-end military aircraft. The defense sector will be paying close attention to see if this concept moves from idea to execution and whether it changes the way air forces think about modernization going forward. The U.S. has unveiled a secret weapon that could change the rules of engagement against the cartels forever. For years, the military has developed this ultimate fighter jet under a classified program, shrouded in mystery and designed to strike enemy strongholds. Now, key stats have leaked, and the implications are staggering. Cartel compounds across Mexico, once untouchable, may no longer stand a chance. Precision, speed, and overwhelming firepower could annihilate entire operations in seconds. Can the cartels survive this new era of aerial dominance? Join us as we reveal how the U.S. secret fighter jet could redefine combat against Mexico's deadliest cartels. For more than 2 decades, Mexico has been locked in a brutal struggle against its drug cartels, but the battlefield has shifted. These groups are no longer just traffickers. They have evolved into highly militarized, territorial forces capable of going toe-to-toe with state armies. Armed with improvised explosive devices, drone-delivered bombs, anti-material rifles, and heavily reinforced vehicles, the cartels now operate more like insurgent armies than traditional criminal organizations. They recruit foreign mercenaries, train in advanced combat tactics, and control vast swaths of territory, nearly a third of Mexico as of mid-2024. But now the tides are about to turn. The United States is ready to strike decisively, targeting cartel strongholds and neutralizing their arsenals in an instant with a new secret weapon, a next-generation fighter jet. In March 2025, the United States unveiled the F-47 fighter jet, the most advanced aircraft ever deployed in aerial warfare. It is the centerpiece of the Air Force's next-generation air dominance program, designed to eventually replace the F-22 Raptor fleet. The program uses a family of systems approach centered on a fast, long-range, stealthy sensor shooter fighter, originally called the Penetrating Counter-Air, or PCA. The F-47's development began over a decade ago under the NGAD program, which tested and refined advanced technologies through experimental X-planes. By 2023, the Air Force envisioned a fleet of next-generation fighters working alongside hundreds of integrated drones, forming a coordinated network capable of dominating contested skies and outmatching even the most heavily armed criminal organizations. The program, however, faced turbulence. The NGAD development contract was scheduled for selection in 2024, yet rising costs, with each fighter projected at 3 times the price of an F-35 Lightning II, forced a temporary pause. The Air Force conducted a thorough study to determine whether the NGAD program could ensure air superiority against rapidly advancing global threats. By early 2025, the conclusion was clear. NGAD was the only viable option to maintain dominance in contested environments. Military leaders emphasized that 6th-generation crewed aircraft would be essential to counter new, sophisticated adversary fighters. On March 21, 2025, President Donald Trump officially announced the program would move forward. The centerpiece fighter would be called the F-47, and Boeing was awarded a $20 billion engineering and manufacturing development contract. The F-47 designation honors both the Air Force's legacy and the vision of creating the world's first 6th-generation fighter. The program also revitalized Boeing's military aviation division, positioning it at the forefront of next-generation U.S. air power. Since 2020, the Air Force has flown X-planes, experimental aircraft designed to test and refine the F-47's revolutionary systems. Air Force Chief of Staff General David Allvin confirmed the first full flight is expected by early 2029, near the end of President Trump's term. In May, General Allvin released a striking infographic revealing just how far the F-47 and its supporting drones surpass the capabilities of current 4th and 5th generation fighters. The first headline from the data: the F-47's combat range is estimated at around 10,000 nautical miles. This is unprecedented for a U.S. fighter jet and places the aircraft well ahead of anything currently in service. Such an extended range is not just a numerical advantage, it fundamentally expands the operational reach of America's air power. A range of this magnitude also suggests that the F-47 is designed to confront one of modern warfare's most complex challenges: anti-access area denial, or A2AD, bubbles. According to the International Institute for Strategic Studies, an A2AD bubble is intended to function as an impenetrable zone of aerial defenses. By deploying overlapping anti-air systems, adversaries create areas where enemy aircraft cannot safely enter without significant risk of being destroyed. The IISS cites Russia's attempts to establish such a bubble over Crimea as a clear example. The region is defended by S-400 and S-300 air defense systems, reinforced by 3K-55 Bastion P and 3K-60 BAL coastal missile systems. Together, these assets are meant to prevent Ukrainian forces from attacking from the air or the Black Sea, effectively forcing them to operate in highly contested zones that were previously permissive. However, the tactic has not fully achieved its intended effect. Ukrainian long-range drones and missiles have successfully penetrated the Russian A2AD bubble multiple times, demonstrating vulnerabilities in even the most sophisticated defense networks. At the same time, no manned Ukrainian fighter, including the country's F-16s, has entered Crimean airspace, underscoring the deterrent effect of such a defensive network. The F-47's exceptional range could provide a decisive counter. With the ability to fly over 1,000 nautical miles, pilots would face fewer constraints from fuel or endurance limits, allowing them to focus fully on penetrating these heavily defended zones. This opens the door to precision strikes against strategic targets that an adversary previously considered untouchable. However, there is a caveat to this impressive range. A combat radius of 1,000 nautical miles represents a significant leap over the U.S. Air Force and Navy's current fighter fleet. As TWZ notes, this figure roughly aligns with the Navy's prediction that the F-47 will exceed the range of any aircraft currently in service by approximately 25%, and it may surpass that margin. For comparison, the F-35C has a range of about 670 nautical miles, a limitation that critics have long argued restricts its ability to strike distant targets. A 25% improvement would place the F-47 at roughly 850 nautical miles, yet its actual range of 1,000 nautical miles exceeds even that projection, marking a major advance in operational reach. But there is a strategic concern. The F-47 is intended to serve as the centerpiece of U.S. aerial superiority for decades. At the same time, the Air Force anticipates that future conflicts will unfold in theaters where counter-air threats extend well beyond 1,000 miles. In other words, air defense systems are expected to grow larger, more capable, and more lethal, potentially outpacing the jet's current range. Put simply, while the F-47's 1,000 nautical mile endurance allows it to penetrate today's A2AD bubbles, it may not be fully future-proofed against the next generation of extended-range defenses. And there is an additional nuance. General Alvin's ex-post did not state a definitive range of 1,000 nautical miles. It referred to 1,000 plus. The meaning of that plus remains unclear. It could indicate a capability of 1,050 nautical miles, or perhaps even 1,250. Until further details emerge, the true extent of the F-47's range, and just how extraordinary it may be, remains an open question. It is also important to note that the 1,000 nautical mile range applies to the base model of America's sixth-generation fighter. Future design tweaks, either before the F-47's unveiling or after it enters service, could further extend its reach. For now, that headline figure defines the jet's extraordinary endurance. But range is only part of the story. After all, long-range capabilities are of little use if a fighter cannot move quickly enough to traverse enemy territory while avoiding advanced counter-air threats. The F-47 addresses this with its second major attribute, speed. The aircraft is expected to exceed Mach 2, more than twice the speed of sound. While other jets, such as Russia's Su-27 or the US F-15, can achieve similar velocities, they trade speed for stealth, making them easier to detect and engage with high-speed counter-air missiles. The challenge lies in heat and radar signatures. Faster flight generates more heat, increasing the jet's visibility to enemy sensors and providing a larger target for infrared-seeking missiles. The F-47, however, is designed to combine exceptional speed with advanced stealth capabilities, allowing it to move through contested airspace with minimal detection. Speed is not just about evasion, it is vital for projecting air power effectively. Modern engagements are likely to take place far from home bases, in contested regions where rapid response, sustained loitering, and precision strikes are essential. The F-47's combination of high speed, extended range, and endurance ensures that pilots can reach targets quickly, provide decisive support, and return safely to friendly territory, even in heavily defended areas. The analysis of the F-47's design almost seems prophetic, describing capabilities years before the statistics became public. The reality is that the two primary challengers to U.S. air supremacy, China and Russia, already possess advanced air defense systems capable of targeting even high-speed fighters like the F-14, which can reach Mach 2.3. This is why stealth has historically been a central focus for U.S. fighter design. Yet future conflicts are expected to unfold differently. Rather than direct confrontations over home territory, potential engagements are likely to occur in contested regions of the developing world. In these scenarios, speed becomes just as critical as stealth. Pilots must have the ability to strike quickly, exploit enemy vulnerabilities, and withdraw before defenses can react. This combination of speed and agility is essential for maintaining operational dominance in an environment where adversaries possess sophisticated counter-air systems. Stealth remains indispensable, and the F-47 incorporates it seamlessly. However, the newly revealed specifications indicate a shift in design philosophy. Speed combined with stealth is now recognized as the defining edge for sixth-generation fighters. Once operational, the F-47 will be capable of striking targets over distant regions, using its speed to penetrate advanced defenses and its stealth to remain undetected, a combination that amplifies its tactical flexibility and lethality. Despite these advancements, key performance details remain unknown. If the F-47's Mach 2+ speed relies on afterburners, questions remain about its supercruise capabilities, its top speed without afterburners engaged, and the efficiency of sustaining such velocity over long distances. Fuel consumption at maximum speed and endurance under combat conditions is yet to be disclosed. Even so, the F-47 appears to merge the velocity of America's fastest non-stealth fighters with the stealth of slower platforms, such as the F-35 and F-22. Early indications suggest it may surpass both in radar evasion. According to the latest information, the F-47 will feature Stealth++ technology, a step beyond the F-22's Stealth Plus and the F-35 standard stealth systems. The meaning of Stealth++ is not fully defined, but it likely represents a significant reduction in radar and infrared signatures. By comparison, the F-22 boasts one of the smallest radar cross-sections of any fighter jet, appearing roughly the size of a marble to enemy radar. While this does not render it invisible, it grants near invisibility in an era dominated by automated aerial defenses. When a radar system detects only a marble-sized object, it is more likely to dismiss the aircraft as a non-threat. This allows the F-22 to approach targets while minimizing the risk of missile engagement. The F-47, with its Stealth++ designation, could take this a step further. Its radar cross-section may be even smaller than a marble, combining unprecedented stealth with the speed already discussed. This presents a new challenge for U.S. adversaries. They would no longer face merely difficult-to-detect aircraft, but a fighter capable of evading even the most sophisticated defenses. In this scenario, the jet's 1,000 nautical mile-plus range becomes even more significant. Range is useless if the aircraft cannot be detected by enemy systems, but the F-47 may render that concern obsolete. Much about Stealth++ remains unknown. Early NGAD designs included canards, small forewings ahead of the main wings, which could compromise radar evasion due to increased surface area. Whether these remain in the F-47 is unclear, though concept art suggests they may have been removed. Additionally, details on counterintelligence and electronic warfare systems embedded in the aircraft have not been disclosed. Nevertheless, the designation strongly suggests capabilities beyond those of the F-35 and F-22. General Alvin's post also revealed that the U.S. has placed an initial order for 185 F-47s. This is significant because it mirrors the current F-22 fleet size, raising the possibility that the F-47 is intended to eventually replace the F-22. For an initial fleet of 185 aircraft, the United States would face a staggering $55.5 billion in expenditure. Adding the $20 billion projected for completing the F-47's development phase brings the total investment to roughly $75.5 billion for this next-generation fighter program. While the figure is enormous, it is not unprecedented. The F-22 program, for comparison, cost $70 billion, including $30 billion devoted to research and development. It is possible that some of the technologies developed for the F-22 are being integrated into the F-47, which could help reduce development costs, even as higher per-unit expenses bring the total outlay to a level similar to the earlier program. Adjusting for inflation, this represents a significant but justifiable investment in maintaining U.S. air superiority. The timeline for the F-47's debut is equally ambitious. According to Alvin's graphic, the aircraft is expected to become operational sometime between 2025 and 2029. Given that only concept images have been publicly released, a 2025 flight appears highly unlikely unless the program has been progressing in secret and is far more advanced than currently known. A first flight in 2029 is more plausible, yet even this may only mark the beginning of official test flights rather than full operational service. Analysts suggest that the F-47 could enter active service in the 2030s, aligning with prior projections that indicated a planned service entry around 2030. However, it remains possible that accelerated development and increased investment could bring this milestone forward, potentially allowing the United States to field the world's first sixth-generation fighter sooner than expected. TWZ sought further clarification on the program and received a statement from a U.S. Air Force official. The F-47 is expected to fly during this administration. This suggests that accelerating the jet's first flight has become a priority for the current leadership, though only time will reveal whether this goal will be met. While Alvin's infographic provided detailed statistics for the F-47 itself, it also showed a critical supporting component: the fleet of unmanned drones designed to accompany each fighter. These collaborative combat aircraft, or CCAs, are integral to the sixth-generation package, giving pilots a network of aerial assets far beyond the jet they are actively flying. According to the data, the United States plans to acquire more than 1,000 CCAs, many of which will be YQF-42As or YQF-44As, both developed alongside the F-47. The infographic indicates that the operational entry dates for these drones coincide with the fighter, suggesting a coordinated rollout. It appears that the U.S. may purchase these drones in increments of 100 to 150 units, which could indicate either a phased integration aligned with the 185 F-47s or a simultaneous entry into service, with temporary drones bridging the gap until production of the full CCA fleet is complete. The Air Force also plans to produce approximately 5 CCAs for every F-47, though it is unclear whether each fighter will deploy with all 5 simultaneously, or if a smaller number will accompany the jet while the remainder are held in reserve to replace losses during operations. From a performance perspective, both CCAs are notable for their range. Although they do not match the F-47's 1,000 nautical mile endurance, they can travel approximately 700 nautical miles, a distance comparable to standalone drones, but unprecedented for unmanned systems designed to operate collaboratively with a manned fighter. This discrepancy in range raises interesting questions about how these drones will be employed tactically alongside the F-47, particularly in missions requiring deep penetration of contested airspace. The F-47 has long been assumed to serve as the primary control platform for its accompanying CCAs, though their lower range introduces several operational possibilities. Missions extending beyond 700 nautical miles may require the F-47 to operate without its drones, or there could be alternative control platforms that allow the U.S. to deploy CCAs as needed, linking them dynamically to the appropriate fighter. This raises the potential for swapping CCAs in and out to mitigate range limitations, though these details remain speculative at present. Both CCAs are also believed to incorporate some stealth capabilities, though the extent to which they can evade enemy radar is unknown. They are unlikely to match the F-47 in stealth, primarily due to cost and production constraints. This limitation is offset by their expendable nature. As unmanned platforms, CCAs can be deployed aggressively without risking pilots or the high-value fighter jets controlling them. Speed introduces another disparity. Initial reports indicate that the first CCAs will operate at subsonic velocities, meaning they may not keep pace with the F-47 at maximum speed. This suggests that the F-47 may also cruise at subsonic speeds when operating in coordination with its drones. However, it remains possible that U.S. engineers will enhance the CCAs before their official deployment, bringing their speed and range closer to the fighter's performance. Even with these uncertainties, the information released provides a far more complete picture of the F-47 and its supporting aerial platforms than ever before. While many specifics remain undisclosed, it is already evident that the United States is on the verge of introducing a sixth-generation fighter that merges the best attributes of fourth- and fifth-generation aircraft with advanced integrated drone technology. The war on drugs has entered a new phase. For the first time, Washington has authorized the Pentagon to use lethal force against Mexico's cartels. In a single strike, a USM-109 self-propelled howitzer destroyed 15 cartel vehicles, an unmistakable sign that surveillance is over and firepower has begun. This is not a drill. The question now, how far will America go, and how long can the cartels withstand the assault? Join us as we uncover the strategy behind America's first direct strikes on the cartels. The United States military has deployed 4,000 Marines and sailors to the waters surrounding the Caribbean islands of Latin America, signaling the start of direct operations against organized drug cartels. At the center of this deployment is the 22nd Marine Expeditionary Unit, embarked aboard the Iwo Jima Amphibious Ready Group, or ARG, one of the Navy's most advanced expeditionary forces, purpose-built to project power from the sea to any point on the globe. The ARG is composed of three principal amphibious vessels: the USS Iwo Jima, the USS San Antonio, and the USS New York. Each ship is engineered for combat resilience, operational flexibility, and sustained offensive capability. The USS Iwo Jima, a landing helicopter dock, functions as a floating command base for Marines and aircraft alike. It is capable of launching helicopters, MV-22 Osprey tiltrotors, and amphibious assault vehicles. Defensive systems such as the Rolling Airframe Missile System and the Phalanx Close-In Weapon System protect the ship from incoming missiles, aircraft, and surface threats, ensuring operational readiness even in contested waters. The USS San Antonio and USS New York, both amphibious transport docks, are stealth-enhanced platforms designed to transport thousands of Marines, vehicles, and essential equipment directly to shore. They support over-the-horizon amphibious operations through a combination of landing craft, helicopters, and tiltrotor aircraft. Modern command and control systems allow real-time coordination with airborne units, naval forces, and Marines on the ground. Reinforced hulls and structures provide significant blast resistance, enhancing survivability in hostile environments. Together, these vessels form a mobile, heavily defended base capable of sustained operations far from home ports. The 22nd Marine Expeditionary Unit itself brings unmatched versatility and combat capability. Consisting of approximately 2,200 Marines, the unit is trained in amphibious warfare, urban combat, reconnaissance, and special operations. It is equipped with armored vehicles, amphibious assault vehicles, artillery, and air support assets, including AH-1Z Viper attack helicopters, AV-8B Harrier jump jets, and MV-22 Ospreys. This combination of firepower and mobility enables rapid, decisive strikes against both land and coastal targets. The ARG's effectiveness also stems from its integrated network of advanced technologies. Ships, aircraft, and marine units are connected through secure, real-time command and control systems, allowing rapid intelligence sharing, precision targeting, and coordinated operations. This connectivity enables the ARG to conduct amphibious assaults humanitarian missions, maritime security, or specialized operations with speed and accuracy. Its mobility ensures a global response capability within days, projecting both deterrent and offensive power. Additional naval assets, including a nuclear-powered attack submarine, multiple destroyers, and a guided missile cruiser, further support the expedition. Among the military vehicles reportedly being deployed is the M109 self-propelled howitzer, produced by BAE Systems and a mainstay of U.S. Army artillery units. This tracked vehicle, weighing 27.5 tons, measures 30 feet in length, 10 feet 4 inches in width, and 10 feet 8 inches in height. It accommodates a crew of 6, a commander, gunner, driver, and 3 ammunition specialists. The vehicle is powered by a Detroit diesel 8-box 71T engine paired with an Allison XTG 411-4A cross-drive transmission, enabling a top speed of 35 miles per hour and an operational range of 216 miles. Constructed with all-welded aluminum armor, the M109 offers protection against small arms fire and shell fragments. The driver sits at the front left of the hull, with the power pack located to the right and the turret at the rear. Visibility is provided through 3 M45-day periscopes, one of which can be replaced with a passive night vision periscope. The rear-mounted turret features a fully traversable design, with a commander's cupola on the right side offering 360-degree rotation and a pine tool-mounted .50 caliber machine gun. The gunner operates from the left side of the turret, while twin rear doors facilitate ammunition resupply. A manually lowered spade at the rear of the hull stabilizes the vehicle when firing top charges, ensuring precision during artillery operations. The M109 also employs a torsion bar suspension system on each side, supported by 7 dual rubber-tired road wheels. The drive sprocket is positioned at the front, with the idler at the rear, and there are no track return rollers. Its tracks are of a single-pin, center guide design, featuring replaceable rubber pads to enhance mobility over varied terrain. Equipped with night vision capabilities, the M109 does not protect against nuclear, biological, or chemical threats. However, the vehicle can be adapted for amphibious operations with a kit of 9 airbags, 4 along each hull side and 1 at the front. Once inflated, these allow the vehicle to propel itself across rivers at speeds up to 4 miles per hour using its tracks. The primary armament consists of a 155mm M126 howitzer mounted in an M127 assembly, complete with a fume extractor and a large muzzle brake. Its effective firing range extends to 10 miles, with a maximum rate of fire of 6 rounds per minute and a sustained rate of 3 rounds per minute. The recoil system is hydro-pneumatic, while the Welland-step thread breech block ensures secure operation. Hydraulic systems control gun elevation, depression, and turret traverse, with manual overrides available for emergencies. Fire control equipment includes the M118C elbow telescope for direct fire, providing 4 times magnification and a 10-degree field of view, the M117 panoramic telescope for indirect fire, and the M1A1 gunner's quadrant. Beyond the hardware, U.S. military officials are preparing to expand operational options in Latin America. Historically, the Navy had to coordinate with the Coast Guard to carry out lethal actions or arrests. Current planning includes multiple kinetic options against drug cartels, ranging from potential missile strikes launched from destroyers to closer collaboration with Mexican authorities to target criminal networks directly. Officials envision the construction of barracks and secure operational bases in Mexico, allowing American Special Operations Forces to conduct precision capture missions against high-value targets. In May, U.S. and Mexican forces conducted a rare raid on 3 major drug laboratories in Sinaloa, seizing fentanyl and chemical precursors, operations performed directly on cartel territory. Despite these measures, U.S. officials acknowledge clear limits under current rules of engagement. As a Washington Post report notes, military strikes remain audacious and potentially unlikely to receive presidential approval, signaling both the ambition and the caution guiding U.S. operations in the region. In recent months, the United States quietly deployed 2 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers to the Gulf of Mexico, a move without precedent in the region's modern naval history. These warships had only recently concluded missions in the Red Sea, where they played a role in countering Houthi attacks. The Arleigh Burke destroyer is one of the most advanced and heavily armed platforms the U.S. Navy has ever produced, combining layered defenses, long-range strike capability, and sophisticated electronic warfare systems. Each ship carries the ANSLQ-32 electronic warfare suite, designed to detect, track, and disrupt enemy radar. Variants such as the SLQ-32V3, V6, and V7 add radar jamming capabilities, giving the destroyer the ability to blind hostile sensors before an attack can be launched. Their firepower is centered on the Mark 41 vertical launching system, with 90 cells on the early versions and 96 cells on later ships. These cells carry a wide range of missiles, making the destroyer more heavily armed than many cruisers that preceded it. The standard missile family provides the primary air defense shield. The SM-2 offers both medium and long-range protection. At the same time, the SM-6 extends engagement ranges beyond the horizon and is capable of targeting both aircraft and warships. Advanced seeker technology allows these missiles to engage multiple targets at once, with minimal reliance on shipboard radar illumination. For land attack, the Arleigh Burkes rely on the Tomahawk cruise missile. The latest Block VA variant has introduced new capabilities. The Block VA, or Maritime Strike Tomahawk, extends the destroyer's ability to engage enemy warships, while the Block VB carries a new multi-effects warhead optimized for hardened or diverse land targets. With up to 96 Tomahawks loaded, a single destroyer can strike infrastructure, bases, or cartel-linked facilities far inland. The deployment of these destroyers positions them within reach of cartel-controlled laboratories and smuggling infrastructure, giving the United States the option to carry out precision strikes at sea or on land if required. Public statements, however, present the mission in different terms. Both Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador and U.S. Ambassador Ronald Johnson have stressed that the operations are framed as cooperative rather than unilateral. Ambassador Johnson wrote on X, "This is not about the United States acting alone. It's about building a joint, unshakable front with Mexico to defend our citizens, dismantle the cartel's networks, and ensure that the only people who need to fear for their future are those who profit from murder, addiction, and chaos." Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum responded with equal caution, asserting, "The United States is not sending its military to Mexico. We cooperate, we collaborate, but there will be no invasion. We are ruling this out absolutely." Earlier, in April 2025, the White House sought permission for U.S. troops to cross the Mexican border to assist in combat operations, including the use of lethal force against cartel targets. President Sheinbaum declined the proposal, maintaining sovereignty and operational control. While discussions of drug cartels typically focus on the United States and Mexico, the latest orders reveal a broader operational focus, targeting a country rarely mentioned in cartel narratives: Venezuela. On July 25, 2025, the U.S. government officially designated the Venezuelan cocaine cartel, Deo Sols, as a foreign terrorist organization. This cartel is alleged to operate as an extension of the Venezuelan government, comprised of military officers and political elites. Its origins trace back to the 1990s, when traffickers in Colombia began bribing Venezuelan border guards, evolving into what U.S. authorities now describe as a narco-terrorist enterprise with state-level involvement. Unlike Mexico, the official position of the United States is that Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro directly controls the Deo Sols cartel, and that his government functions as a narco-terrorist state, and this has been the U.S. stance for several years. The cartel is alleged to enjoy protection through its ties to senior Venezuelan officials. Its name, Deo Sols, is said to reference the Venezuelan military, translating roughly to Cartel of the Suns, with sun drawn from the insignia found on military general epaulets. In essence, the cartel operates as a covert arm of the Venezuelan state, functioning not as a traditional private military contractor, but as a private criminal enterprise embedded within government structures. Unlike Mexico, which is viewed as a partner and diplomatic ally, Venezuela is regarded as a hostile state. McDermott, co-founder of Inside Crime, explains, The difference in Venezuela compared to Mexico and Colombia is that a significant portion of the business is managed within the state. Supporting evidence includes testimonies from defectors, alongside documented instances of Venezuelan military flights caught transporting narcotics to destinations, including Spain and the United States. These factors altered the U.S. risk calculus. Operations against Venezuela are considered legitimate actions against a hostile nation, unlike interventions in Mexico, where careful diplomacy must be maintained. The deployment of U.S. forces near Venezuelan waters is strategically significant, as these routes are major channels for illicit substances traveling from Venezuela through Mexico and the Caribbean islands before reaching the United States. The official U.S. designation of DIOSOLS as a foreign terrorist organization underscores these concerns. According to the announcement, the cartel has provided material support to both the Aragua Tren and the Sinaloa cartel while operating directly from Venezuela. The U.S. asserts that Maduro has corrupted multiple branches of the Venezuelan government, including segments of the army, intelligence services, legislature, and judiciary, to facilitate the cartel's trafficking operations to the United States. In response, the White House announced a $50 million reward for information leading to the arrest or conviction of Nicolas Maduro for violations of U.S. narcotics law. The tensions between the United States and Venezuela are rooted in political as well as economic factors. Since 2020, Maduro is accused of consolidating power, effectively ending democratic governance during the 2024 election cycle. Venezuela also holds the world's largest proven oil reserves, surpassing even Saudi Arabia, and maintains strict state control over these resources, which the U.S. claims Maduro leverages as a political and strategic tool. From a national security perspective, Venezuela hosts Russian military advisors and maintains extensive arms programs with Russia, including granting port access to Russian warships. Russian bombers have been stationed in the country, and S-400 anti-aircraft systems operate on Venezuelan soil, marking a rare deployment of such advanced weapons in the Western Hemisphere. In addition, China has heavily invested in Venezuela's infrastructure, while Iran supplies oil tankers, military technology, and Quds Force operatives, its equivalent of a covert intelligence service. For Washington, Venezuela represents a strategic foothold where key geopolitical adversaries are permitted to operate. Consequently, what may appear as a counter-cartel mission in the Western Hemisphere carries the potential to escalate into a confrontation with other major powers. From Maduro's perspective, the U.S. presence is viewed as hostile interference, infringing upon national sovereignty. Venezuelan authorities cite a long history of American interventions in Latin America and frame the current operations as a continuation of that pattern, attributing the situation to the failures of the war on drugs. Public opinion within Venezuela remains divided, with factions both supporting and opposing Maduro. Insiders close to the White House, however, describe the mission's objective as the complete dismantling of Venezuelan cartel operations across the Western Hemisphere, signaling the extensive scope of the operation. A significant challenge for the U.S. military is its relative lack of institutional relationships in the region, compared with agencies like the FBI and DEA, which have maintained operational networks with Mexican authorities since the 1980s. To address this gap, the Pentagon recently established the Joint Service Interagency Advisory Group. This initiative integrates U.S. Special Forces operators with experts from federal agencies, such as the FBI and DEA, leveraging on-the-ground contacts and intelligence networks developed over decades. Direct action missions in Latin America have historical precedent, often serving as cautionary examples. In 2012, the DEA conducted Operation Anvil in Honduras, deploying tactical teams, effectively SUAT-like units, alongside Honduran police for a 90-day mission targeting drug traffickers. The operation, however, included 3 controversial incidents of deadly force that resulted in civilian casualties, provoking international criticism. Subsequent review by the U.S. Department of State concluded that insufficient operational planning and unclear rules of engagement were major factors in the failure. Following the operation, the DEA tactical teams were ordered to withdraw and were ultimately disbanded. The current campaign extends far beyond operations abroad. On the U.S. side of the border, The Department of Defense has designated nearly one-third of the southern border as national defense areas. These zones empower U.S. troops to detain individuals crossing illegally, circumventing traditional restrictions on military involvement in law enforcement. Roughly one-third of the U.S.-Mexico border is now under militarized control. Over 7,000 troops patrol hundreds of miles across Texas, New Mexico, and soon Arizona, supported by more than 50 Stryker armored vehicles operating in the desert borderlands. To date, over 1,400 migrants have been charged with trespassing on military-controlled land. These measures have disrupted the flow of drugs and migrants into the United States. The crackdown has cut cartel funding streams, and high-profile arrests of top cartel leaders in Mexico have sparked a violent internal conflict, forcing some cartels to merge in an effort to survive. Parallel to this militarization is Operation at Large, the largest coordinated interior enforcement effort since the 1940s. It involves more than 5,000 federal law enforcement personnel, including 3,000 ICE agents, 1,800 members of Homeland Security, and additional personnel from the Justice Department, U.S. Marshals, and Border Protection. The operation reportedly includes requests for up to 20,000 National Guard troops to support ICE activities, marking the most extensive federal deployment in the interior of the country in modern history. Admiral Halsey, who assumed command of U.S. forces in Central and South America in November 2024, recently outlined his strategy to Congress. The United States of America and the many nations and territories that comprise Latin America and the Caribbean are bound together by rich cultural tradition, family bonds, economic endeavor, and enduring commitment to democratic principles, he stated. He emphasized that the greatest threat is not solely the cartels, but also the strategic actions of Russia and China in the region. These authoritarian regimes continue their methodical incursion into the region, using varying tools towards separate end states. We can stem this tide by standing together, shoulder to shoulder with our allies and partners. Our partners want to work with the United States, but to maintain their trust and confidence, they must feel and see our presence and commitment before it's too late. Media reports indicate that the president has issued a classified directive, potentially a presidential finding for covert action or a presidential memorandum, enabling sensitive military operations. From this directive, officers develop CON plans that evolve into fully executable operational plans. Taken together, these developments reveal the emergence of a multi-front campaign: militarized buffer zones along U.S. soil, mass interior enforcement raids supported by unprecedented numbers of federal agents, military presence in urban centers such as Los Angeles, expanded intelligence collection abroad, and now directives for overt kinetic operations. The United States is conducting a campaign across the Western Hemisphere unlike anything seen in recent memory, integrating both domestic and international efforts with the military and intelligence community at the forefront. Thanks for watching. Before you go, click the link on your screen to check out another video. See you there.